Hey, this is Rob Swanson with the Real Estate Mogul Show. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Rob Swanson back here with another episode of the Real Estate Mogul Show. Hey, we are going to get into this pretty quickly today. We've got people in the studio to make this fun and entertaining once again, including Edgar, the office mascot schnauzer. And we also have on the couch with us here today, Henry. Henry, give us a quick update on who you are and why you are here.
Yeah, what's up? Glad to be back. This is my second episode. I've had a couple people already say that they saw me and Mike from last week, so that's good. So if you haven't seen that episode, definitely go back and check that out. But yeah, Henry, I run the customer-facing side of Freedom Soft here. Newer real estate investor. Can I call myself a real estate investor yet?
Heck yeah, you can, man.
Two-year real estate investor. Yeah, coming on strong. So yeah, that's a little bit of background about myself. So most of the people that may listen to the podcast have maybe seen me on a Zoom call or a training or an onboarding or something like that.
Love it. And over here off camera running the box, we've got Joe.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here again. I like our new little setup. We shifted things around and are diving into it. Missing Mike today, but we'll get it done.
Are we missing Mike?
Yeah, I think so. Mike crushed it. I don't even know where he's at out of the office.
I've worked with Mike long enough that I can bust his chops like that.
Yeah, even when he's not here.
Like here, I got to tell this story. So the story, how I met Mike, was back in 2004. I had signed up for a local charity golf tournament, and I paid for a foursome to play in this golf tournament. I was one of the people, and I had three other slots to round out the four. And I get an email the day before the tournament at about noon or so. Hey, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at the blah, blah, blah charity golf tournament. And I thought, holy crap, I totally forgot that I paid for this. Totally forgot that I'm showing up to this. I have nobody lined up to play. And so I went to a gal that was working for me at the time, who she used to be a local bank president. And so she was very well connected in the North Denver area. And I said, hey, Kim, can you fill out 3 spots for me? And do you know anybody that's a ringer at golf? And so she connected me to Mike. And so I got on the phone. I said, hey, Mike, I met him. This is the first time I ever met him, right? This is 2004. And I said, can you play golf tomorrow? And he said, yeah, I can. And I said, good. I said, are you a ringer? And he's pretty humble. He wouldn't tell me that he was a stick at golf, but he is scratch golf player, pretty good. And so I met him, had this conversation. I said, hey, by the way, do you have 2 friends? So apparently, number one, I don't have any friends. And number 2, I don't have any friends that play golf, or at least play golf any good. So Mike calls 2 of his buddies, and they're ringers too. So they show up. So the 4 of us end up playing this tournament. And Mike and I rode in the golf cart. So we played 18 holes of golf and got to know each other. And that was the beginning of us getting to know each other. That was the beginning of Mike, like, kind of pursuing the desire to get into real estate investing. And it was 4 years later that he actually joined the team, May 1st, 2008, when we launched our first big fund to take advantage of the crash. Mike joined the team as an acquisitions guy. And in his first month, he's not here. I'll tell you this story, and he will confirm it on another episode. In his first month, he ran the acquisition of 22 houses. So talk about initiation by fire. Mm-hmm. That was a good day. He did let us buy one house on 9th Street down in Denver that didn't have a foundation. So that wasn't such a good day. We had to figure that one out, but it worked out okay.
Well, that figuring something like that out, because in those 22 deals, there's certainly and Henry knows this from working in some of these deals, that things, if it can maybe go wrong, there's an opportunity it's going to go wrong. Right. And that comes with not just in real estate, but I observed it yesterday. We were supposed to record yesterday, right, the show, and there, right, within the business, there was this sort of blow up. And, I would love for, because you're highly successful real estate with the software company as well. And so you're hitting these moments throughout time where you bump into discomfort or a pain point in the business. Sometimes you can, hit it right on. Sometimes you have to involve other people. But I observed that yesterday where you had this pain point, which was like basically halted everything else. And I would love for you to tell a story or talk a little bit about how you address that pain point. And maybe yesterday is a good example, but at any point, how you address a pain point and then how you move through that.
Yeah. So that's it. It's an interesting one, right? And so what we're going to do is in a couple minutes, we're going to get into Henry's story, but let's talk about that, because I think people oftentimes run into challenging things in their business. Something doesn't go as planned. And there are two schools of thought or two paths that people take. One is I hit a speed bump, I hit a hurdle, I hit a brick wall, and I give up and I decide it doesn't work. The other is I hit a speed bump, I hit a brick wall, I hit a hurdle, and I press through and I try to learn from it. So yesterday was a good example. We were driving traffic. We were spending money on paid media, so online marketing, and spending a significant amount of money every single day. And we had a website that went down. And the website went down. Nothing was working. We're flushing money down the toilet. And so what I had to do is I had to stop. I had to step back and I had to say, okay, what are the priorities? Like, what does my calendar tell me I have to do? But then what does my gut sometimes, and what does the math and my brain tell me I have to do? I needed to stop. I needed to postpone things on my calendar, and I needed to handle the things that were the most urgent. Now, in general, I am not one to operate my day by putting out fires. I'm not a fireman by profession. But there are times when putting out the fire is necessary. Mm-hmm. And, the skill and the ability to step up to the plate in those moments of I've got to put out the fire, and keep yourself calm and keep yourself in a place that says, let me logically think through this. Let me critically think through what do I need to do right now to put out the fire and take something across the finish line is the skill that will separate those that succeed from those that fail. And that was yesterday. And I've been an entrepreneur now, business owner for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so I can tell you along the journey that happens. And you try to get yourself to a place where you have the systems, the team, the people to support you in place. But on occasion, things just roll uphill and you have to step in and figure them out.
Was there a point in your career that clicked for you, or where you figured out a system that worked for you when you hit those points?
I don't know that it was a point in time. I think I'm wired that way. I'm wired to solve problems, mm-hmm. right? I think for me, it's more important that I recognize something done at 70% of what I believe I could do it at is better than me getting it to 100% doing it myself. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was my personal realization, was that I need to put systems, people, things in place that may not do it the way I would do it, but still get it done and across the finish line. Mm-hmm. And yet recognize that there are times when I need to step in and help, whether it's the team, I need to help the system, I need to help solve the problem in order to move things forward. Mm-hmm. And like you said, that was yesterday around here. I became a fireman yesterday, and I don't like it when I become a fireman.
Mm-hmm. So it really it's about sort of that initial part of it is about mindset. It's like getting your mindset into fire. I'm a fireman now.
Yeah. And a lot of times people, especially if they've started an entrepreneurial journey from a job, right? They come from, say, corporate America, or from working in a job somewhere somehow. Maybe they've had a manager, maybe they've had someone else that the fires roll uphill and somebody else puts out the fire. And when you go into business for yourself, you realize quickly that you have to take the role of fireman at times, and you have to step up, roll up your sleeves, get dirty, and put out fires at times, because that is what it takes to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Incredible.
Especially coming into like wholesaling too. If that's someone's trying to go in and wholesale, they may think, I mean, I definitely didn't go into it thinking that it was all easy, but I mean, even without some of the advice that you gave me, there are scenarios that are always going to come up.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have to either problem solve or, I mean, if any of those scenarios come up, I hope that any of our users or any of the people that are getting into it, that they don't find themselves like hitting a wall and then just backing out immediately, because I mean,
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like things are going to come up. Like it's a simple system, but it's riddled with complexity and in aspects to it that, you know, you have to push across the finish line. You have to critically think through it.
That's right.
Yeah. But like, even if like, because we'll talk about it, if the deal doesn't close, your first deal, second deal, it doesn't matter. If it doesn't close, I think to be able to step back and like you taught or teach, basically, what skills did you gain, even though that the assignment fee didn't come through on the first one?
Sure.
Because it stacks all those skills and it only gets easier.
That's right.
And then like when that problem comes up on the 5th or 10th deal, you have something to go back on. You're like, oh, I know how to fix this. I know how, or the steps to take to get to X, Y, and Z.
That's right. Right. Yeah, because like for your scenario, Henry, if we go back about a year and a half ago,
year and a half now, yeah.
A year and a half ago, we were doing those trainings that I was just teaching the Freedom Soft and Real Estate Mogul team. And, you know, we were doing it for free. We were just teaching the team as one of the perks of working here. And the objective was to teach our system, right? Generate cash, you know, wholesale. Wholesaling is a strategy that people can use to generate cash. That cash generation can then be used to acquire assets and start to build cash flow. And as you do that in a loop, and you do that more and more regularly and often, you start to build the cash flow that ultimately replaces your income and replaces the expenses. And so we started there. I'd like to go back and just hear from your perspective when you were first introduced to not only Freedom Soft, but at this point you were working with our success team and talking with many of our users, but didn't understand the strategies of real estate investing yet. What was going through your head in those first training sessions when I was teaching what's possible with real estate?
Yeah, so I mentioned it last week, but I mean, even going into that, I wasn't trying to wholesale or become a real estate investor or anything. It was really more, these are the questions that I'm hearing every single day, and I want to feel more confident in talking or answering the questions from our users, because I wanted to be able to help them reach their goals by using Freedom Soft. And at the point, like I didn't want to just be regurgitating things that you told me were answers to these questions. I wanted to be able to confidently know that this is how you do what you're asking me to do, either if it's in Freedom Soft or just on the real estate investing side, because it's all linked together in the end.
Yep.
So that was my mindset going into it. I wanted to walk away just with a longer or a more vast knowledge of that realm that our users are sitting in, and that was really.
So that was the mindset.
Yeah.
Initially, you just wanted to know how to have better conversations when you got on a Zoom call, when you got on a phone call. What shifted your mindset to say, hey, I think I could do this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, going into those sessions, I knew what wholesaling was because it was what our users were trying to do at the time. And so I was familiar with it. But then the more sessions that we did, the more I felt like this was something that I could be really good at. Wasn't easy per se, but it was something that I would be pretty fulfilled in. Like I would find joy in doing it. I mentioned it last week, but like the salesmanship of it, of like just talking to people and being on the phone and, just the negotiating back and forth. Like you and I have talked about this. I like just selling things on Facebook Marketplace or like haggling on Facebook Marketplace has always been fun for me. Like, so just like that aspect of real estate investing and, trying to find a motivated seller, help solve their problem, getting them out of a situation. And then, there's an assignment fee on the other end. I thought that whole scenario from start to finish was just super interesting. And, last week I said, going from those sessions in between, every week, I would find myself, or you would probably find me asking more and more questions
right
in the middle of that week. And that was my mind racing and saying, could I do this? Is it possible?
Yep.
Am I interested enough? And then, coming out of that, that last session, I think I had already formed my LLC. I had already had 3 or 4 lists already planned out, and it was either hit the go button or don't, right?
Well, you are money motivated and you are self-improvement motivated. Mm-hmm. And I think those are 2 things that it takes to succeed as an entrepreneur. I see it quite often if someone is not money motivated and they're not willing to invest in themselves, whether that be financially or with learning or through time, energy, effort, and putting in the work. The people that aren't willing to do those things are the people that fail. And the people that blame a system or people that decide it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And so you had both of those components, right? You were money motivated and you were willing to put in the work to improve yourself and your skills. So once you made that decision and decided to go forward, what did you do? What was your first step, just for the folks watching and listening to this, mm-hmm. to break it down? Because you went from literally sitting in this seat of, I'm going to generate cash, I'm money motivated, I want to learn this, I want to put in the effort, to now having acquired your first rental property. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I want to tie together is you utilized the skill you developed to acquire that rental property. You used your skill as a wholesaler to find that deal off market, which ultimately allowed you to buy it at a better price, create greater cash flow than if you had just gone and bought it off on market or from a real estate agent, yeah, or from another wholesaler. So take me back to, mm-hmm. what did you do to start?
Yeah. Just in the very beginning, like I said, I had my hand on the go button. Like I could start at any time. Like through that class, I knew the steps that you could take or don't take.
Yep.
And the first thing I needed to really get in my mind was my why, basically. And you kind of held a lot of our feet to the fire in one of those last calls. You were like, what do you want? Or, as far as money goes, why do you want X amount of money, or what do you want in your lifestyle? And I gave you an answer that I wanted to support my family, do X, Y, and Z. And you said, well, to do that, you need to be at this certain point, right?
Yep.
And that answer, based off of the other lessons that you had given us in that, I knew wholesaling was a route to that, right? So that's number one. Number two is formulating a game plan and then sticking to it. Because even in this industry, like I found out there's so many different ways that I could have went and obtained a rental property, or wholesaled this way, or did it that way, right? Yep. So one thing that I've tried to stay really strict in is the game plan, like yep. the rubric that you and I have set up for myself. And, it may twist and turn a little bit, but to stay super, super strict in how I'm doing it, because it worked for the first one, right? Yeah. So yeah, the first step that I did, to answer your question, I used FreedomSoft to build a very similar type of list that we push a lot of our users to be looking for. I found a market that I felt like was inventory heavy, distressed heavy, but also buyer heavy as well.
Yep.
Right. So the best
plenty
of both worlds.
Plenty of distressed inventory.
Yeah.
But plenty of investor activity. So that inventory is being consumed, being turned around, but it's sort of ever cycling, right? Is that kind of?
Yep.
So I would typically call that a cash flow market, right? Or a price stable market, something that historically, when you find those type of markets, they historically don't have big appreciation, up and down crash swings. They tend to be relatively stable. You know, over the last decade and a half, we've seen a rise, but it's not the meteoric, mountain peak rise and crash with every cycle. It's slower, it's steady, it's a price stable market. So even when the crash occurs, you're not losing 50% or 70% of the value. It does come down, but then it cycles its way back up.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I kind of did some research off on my own. Half of the time, and the other half, I'm around a bunch of real estate investors that are always mentioning cities and states and this and that. And, I kind of learned a little bit about where you would really want to be in the rental market and the wholesaling market, and where you would probably want to stay away from.
Yep.
And that landed me on, multiple of my virtual markets that I've wholesaled in now. But really what I was looking for was, a lot of inventory, a lot of buyers. I'm looking for where rents are over what the debt service may be on the house if someone were to acquire it with lending or something like that.
Yep.
So that really got me in like an average home price of like sub $200,000 in that market, where rentals usually go for well below $150,000 to $120,000, where rents definitely beat out 1% of the purchase, right? So that's essentially what I was looking for.
So let's take that back and break it down for a second. So you got started, you built a list. So in FreedomSoft, you used FreedomSoft's Lead Finder. Now, did you build a standard list, or did you customize something? So did you use the advanced search filters?
I did, yeah.
Or did you use one of the standard default lists that we just provide?
I did. So at the time, I knew only so much about the market that I wanted to go into. I didn't know where I focus now. It's a lot different. But what I did was I used one of the stock lists that we did, but I opened up the advanced filters basically to say, on top of vacancy, for example, that's one of the lists that I started out with.
Yep, vacant house list.
Yeah, a vacant house list. I also wanted to make sure that I was hitting all types of houses, so not just single family. So I didn't want to limit myself on just wholesaling single family. I wanted to make sure that list also filtered in duplexes, triplexes, and quads.
Yep.
So I turned that on as well. So for example, if anyone does that list in FreedomSoft and they get 500, for example, if it's in a market where there are a lot of multifamily, if you check those boxes, the list is only going to get bigger, right? So more opportunity.
Yep.
So I definitely wanted to make sure that those were included. At the time, I was including all types of owners, so I wasn't narrowing it down. I wanted to raise my chances of getting in touch with just anyone to get better at wholesaling was my goal.
Yep.
So to be honest, outside of adding criteria that just raised up the number, I didn't do anything that actually made the number lower in the beginning, because it was, is it vacant? Is it absentee owned? Yes. Single family and multifamily. That was it. Yeah.
So you built that list inside of FreedomSoft with those. So you built a standard vacant house list, and then you went into the advanced filters and said, expand beyond single family, give me duplexes, triplexes, and quads. And you did that in a certain targeted geography.
Yep.
Now,
overall, countywide. This was countywide at the time.
Okay. So you did the entire county. You didn't limit yourself to zip code or a group of zip codes.
Nope, not yet.
And I think that's smart. And this is where I think sometimes people make mistakes is they go in and they go too narrow and too niche, and they don't yet know where true opportunities are. And so they kind of list build themselves out of making money and building their real estate investing business by trying to get too targeted.
Yeah.
And so you didn't do that. So you went countywide, and then you built the list, and then you sent direct mail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
I knew I had X amount of time to expend in this endeavor. Right.
Yep.
So I knew that if I answered the question, who am I marketing to? Mike talked about this last week. Who am I marketing to? So that's the list. How am I marketing to them?
Yep.
And that's my form of marketing. So that was direct mail for me because at the time I wasn't going to have the availability to skip trace and work through a list of 500, 1,000 people.
Yep. Cold calling.
Yeah.
Yep.
And since this was my first endeavor, I also wasn't going to go hire someone to do that for me because I wanted to learn about it myself first, right? And that's a big difference that a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. So direct mail, that's what I went with. So that's why I built the list that I did, because if I'm going to do direct mail, I want to hit as many people as I can that match that criteria is what I'm looking for. So that's why I sent direct mail to that massive list. At the time, it may have been around 2,000 people.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you remember how big of a list it was that you built and mailed to?
I think the first list I ever built was 2,000. And at the time, I'd still played around with list building to see what other results would come up in different types of searches. So I still had those ready to go.
Yep.
If one area or one type just hit a little bit harder than the other.
So, one of the things that I hear a lot from people, and you probably hear it a lot too, you talk to a lot of people. In fact, right before we walked into the studio here, you were on an hour-long Zoom call with a FreedomSoft user. And I hear people tell me that there are two things that prevent them from having success. Number one, they don't have enough leads. Number two, they don't have enough time. Mm-hmm. Now, the third thing would be number three, they don't have enough money. But I usually hear leads and time more. Mm-hmm. And so full-time job, you looked at wholesaling, generating cash as an opportunity to make some extra money, add on top, and then ultimately begin building your portfolio. How did you approach wholesaling? This is something that I talk about, passive wholesaling, which is a complete oxymoron, right? But most people approach wholesaling with a complete hustle mentality. And that's not what you did, and that's not what I taught you to do. You approached it from a passive strategy and said, how can I do the smart things and leverage my effort to produce the result I want? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and on that point, like I use the data side approach to it, right? I could go out and build a massive list that has no rhyme or reason and then just work through it as much as I can and hit it as hard as I can. Will I close deals in that list? For sure.
Yeah.
But I've spent a lot of time and a lot of stress through that. Yep. And like we already said, my main job is to grow FreedomSoft. It's what my passion is in software. So on the passive side of things, I need to be smart with how I expend my additional extra time on the wholesaling side. So my list needs to be strong, my marketing needs to be strong, and I need to be really good on the phone, right? Because when I get on the phone, I have X amount of time to get that deal under contract. If not, then I've almost wasted an additional amount of time because I could be focusing on another deal or something else that can make me money, right? So I really focused, and it didn't come immediately, right? I'm in this mindset a lot more now because I'm 2 years in. So I'm now thinking like, is this deal, or is the amount of work that I'm going to spend on this deal going to get me to this amount of stress or this amount of money? And if it's this amount of stress, is it even worth it at that point?
That's
because I can go and follow up with someone else on my list and probably get another deal under contract. That's going to be a little bit easier on me, right?
Yep. But that wasn't your mindset at the beginning, right? At the very beginning. And so you built a list of around 2,000 records. You mailed it out. So that cost you about $1,000. So it was about 50 cents a piece, roughly.
Yeah.
Printed, mailed, delivered, postcards.
Yeah.
So about $1,000. And you got leads coming back in. And when those leads came back in, and initially you were working all of the leads with equal fervor.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Is your mindset different today
than it was when it first started? Do you have an ability to recognize?
I can discern the deals a little bit better. The script doesn't change.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a 5-story house or a little itty bitty 1-bedroom ranch home.
Right.
The way that I go about talking to that seller is no different. There's the same equal amount of excitement and problem solving in both deals.
Yep.
But in the very beginning, again, this is a very passive approach because it's not the way that I like to teach it to our users, because if you're around to answer and talk to the leads that are calling you, please answer the phone immediately, right? Because what a lot of people may not be thinking is, I'll just call them back, right? Yeah. I'm not around right now. But if they got your mail and they were on a strong list, they got another investor's mail, or it's coming, right? Yep. But they chose to call you because of how soon you hit them in the distress or how well your marketing was. So answer the phone, right?
Right.
Because they want to talk to you at that moment.
Yep.
That unfortunately wasn't my case at all times, because some people will call you. Somebody may call me right now, right, from direct mail, but I can't answer it because we're on here, or I may be doing something else and actually on the FreedomSoft side of things. So I had to give myself really 30 minutes to 45 minutes, sometimes over my lunch, to see if anyone had called me. And then I would spend 5:30 to 7:30 for the first year after work focusing on sending out more marketing, focusing on building my knowledge about the market, and then also talking to sellers first and foremost and returning the phone calls. So it definitely was not as aggressive as I wanted it to be in the very beginning. But as the leads were coming in, I tried to answer them live through the FreedomSoft app as they came in. That wasn't possible for me all the time. But luckily enough, FreedomSoft does a really good job at tracking the leads coming in. I knew when they called. Sometimes people leave voicemails, some people don't, right? Yep. But you still see the missed call. You still see the person that you can call back. Some people will text you. But yeah, it didn't, at the very, very beginning, a lead was a lead to me. It didn't matter what the house looked like. I mean, you most of the time you don't know until you look it up anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I was just excited to get a lead.
Yeah.
Like when that number 1 clicked up, that was exciting for me.
Yeah. 100%, man.
I think it's that speaks to the idea of, in the very beginning of, you have to listen, you have to take those leads and hit it with fervor, because you're building your knowledge. Mm-hmm. Over the course of that first 12 months, your knowledge of that market was so different to even know whether you should hit that lead with fervor or not. That's right. So,
and I hope people don't hear this and saying if Henry gets a call from a house that is half burnt down, he ignores it. No. I don't ignore that. I make the offer because I know there's a buyer out there for everything, because price cures all, right? But the way that I go about, the difference is the way that I go about talking to that seller and what I can offer, that's changed drastically, right? Because I've learned the calculations get a little differently per the house and what's going on. Whereas before, and I was still talking to everybody, but I was just trying to get as good as I can on the phone. Yep. And if seller says A, this is how you react to that. Yeah. Right. There's so many rebuttals that sellers will come at you with that in the very beginning, sometimes you freeze up. Sometimes you technically you just don't know what to say.
But at the end of the day, you failed forward.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Who cares if you get on a call with a seller and you're just what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah.
Just hang up.
Yeah.
Right? And that if you panic and freak out, just hang up.
Yeah. I never hung up, but I think that was a hard mindset to get into at first, because I'm like you in that I'm hard on myself, right? Yeah. So I'm like, I can see why people would say, I spent $1,000 on direct mail. Every lead matters, right? Yep. And it's not that every lead matters. Every lead is an opportunity. That's really how it is.
That's right.
But in the beginning, I wasn't thinking like that.
Yep.
If I messed up on the phone, in my mind I was like, oh, that's one step further to my first deal, because that could have been a deal, right? But you learn, right, and you get better at those conversations, right?
Well, I think you mentioned 2 things. You said that when somebody calls, and they leave a voicemail because maybe you weren't able to answer it live. Maybe you were doing something else. Maybe you're on another phone call, something. They had to leave a voicemail, or they didn't leave a voicemail. And this is the thing I want to point out to people. They just called. The FreedomSoft system captured that call, tracked it as a hang up, and now it sits on your dashboard as a notification that this number called in, created a lead, but they hung up. Didn't leave a voicemail. 66% of the deals that close because of follow-up. Half of those close and the person never left a voicemail. Mm-hmm. So a massive mistake that people make when they're sending out marketing or doing, whether it's direct mail or online lead generation, they're spending money to get a message out there. Mm-hmm. They're capturing inbound leads and replies, and somebody calls in, listens to the voicemail, or calls in and then just hangs up. They don't call those back.
Yeah. And I think those
are huge.
Those are huge. And I think what's important in that is to have your systems set up in place, and really speaks back again to this point of like being on calls with sellers, having a script.
Yeah.
Like you hear it a lot in the industry right now, people talking about scripts, and it is so important. And that script doesn't change, right? Like,
yeah, it doesn't change. I mean, it's in my head now. I don't read it anymore.
Yep.
At first, it was in front of me, and I sounded pretty robotic, right? Because I was reading off of it. But it gets better.
Totally.
And then,
especially when you practice it and you have all those rebuttals, like you've been through them now, so you can just hit it real quick, and you know exactly what to say to that seller to keep them down the line of that one call close.
And some advice on this would be like, to your point, Rob, a lot of people wouldn't call back the hangups, right? And I would say that is no indication that they weren't interested. They just didn't leave a voicemail.
That's right.
But you will get leads that will text you and say, no thanks, not interested, or leave you a voicemail that says, got your postcard, I don't know why you're mailing me, please stop, right? Yep. Still call them.
100%.
Because people see that, and this is a mindset thing, people would see that and say, waste of marketing on that person.
Yep.
But it's not. That is another opportunity for you to be bad at the script one more time, but then you walked away a little bit better, right? And the conversation may be different because they weren't interested, right? Mm-hmm. But it's another 10 seconds, 10 minutes of you on the phone with a seller to just get a little bit more comfortable and a little less scared on the phone.
Well, you said another thing. So we talked about the hang up. The other thing that you talked about was the burned out house, right? Mm-hmm. And when you first got started, whether it was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 950 square foot house that needed lipstick, right? Carpet paint, maybe a broken window fixed, a little bit of plumbing work, but a basic remodel, rehab, right? Versus a burned out house where there was a kitchen fire and you've got charred black, right, framing. And those are two different things. The math is generally the same, but the expectation of the ultimate buyer, the one who's going to take the risk to fix it up, whether that's yourself or someone else, you have to buy that burnout cheaper because of risk. And, the lipstick on a pig rehab, the very simple rehab, $8, $10, $15, even $20,000 rehab. You can do a lot for $20,000, but those can be fairly straightforward rehabs.
And the buyer will pay for the upside.
That's right.
They'll find benefit in the upside that they don't have to do it.
That's right. Yeah. But when you get something that's a burnout, right? Fire damage, when you get something that, was maybe meth or mold or structural, you have to adjust your buy price down. And I think that's the thing that you were alluding to that you learned by having conversations with sellers is that those two different, the level of rehab matters as to, even though the math, right, it's still in a C neighborhood, it's still a 3-bedroom ranch style house. Everything is the same, and you can calculate the estimated repairs on the burnout and the estimated repairs on the carpet and paint job, and you can get to a number. But what you learned is that when it's the excessive rehab, you have to even be less. Like you have to just drop that price.
Yeah.
And it matters.
And I'll tell you how to know that is to be on phone calls with buyers. To really get an idea of who the buyers are that aren't afraid of fire damage, and then also where are they buying, and what are they buying? What are they paying for it? How much of a extra discount do they want?
Yeah. Well, I've bought a lot of deals from wholesalers, right? Over the 20 years I've been doing this, I bought a lot of deals from wholesalers, and I've always tried to take the approach to if a wholesaler shoots me a deal and I look at it and it just doesn't make sense, I always try to go back and tell them why it doesn't make sense. And sometimes, like, their math, they sent out a deal last week and they sent out a deal this week, and they ran the math the exact same way, but the level of rehab required and the risk that I would take on as the buyer was greatly different between the deal this week versus last week. So they ran the same math, and I had to let them know, based on the risk and the construction requirements, we've got to buy it cheaper.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that people don't get early on. And I would probably say that that's one of the most common things that causes newer real estate investors to make an offer and then have to cancel a contract.
Right.
Is just misunderstanding the calculation of oftentimes repair cost and how that factors into the risk side of the equation and whether that's a good deal or not.
Do you remember your first burnout?
I do remember my first burnout. It was in Oklahoma City. I forget the street that it was on, but it was Oklahoma City. It was, 20 years ago, probably 2003. I bought it for $1,500. Okay, $1,500. There was a kitchen fire. The back side of the house was kind of burnt out. It wasn't great. $1,500. I literally had somebody put a cash for houses or 3-bed, 1-bath, burnout, investor special, bandit sign in the front yard, and I hung balloons off of it. And I got a rehabber that rode down the street, and he called, and I flipped it to him for $7,000. So I made $5,500. $5,500 on my first little burnout. But I had to buy it super cheap. That was 20 years ago. That house probably at the time rented for $450, $500 a month, something like that. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath. I remember it. Like, I could go to Oklahoma City and drive you to it. I can't remember the street address, but right. I know generally where it was located.
Right. Incredible. Yeah, that's amazing.
So let's go back to this, because you had some deals that didn't go.
Yeah.
At the beginning, you had to cancel some contracts.
My cancel to close ratio was pretty poor in the very beginning, because it was get everything under contract.
Yep.
Not get the right price.
Yep.
And you learn the hard way, right? You get a little bit better at running numbers, figuring out the market, talking to buyers, and you get a little bit better on the phone of negotiating and just really explaining with the seller if this is the problem that you're trying to get out of, or this is what you're wanting out of this deal, I can supply that, but it needs to come at this price point, right? Because your price point, what you're asking for, they're not taking into account the points that you just made, the risk, the time, right? A lot of local owners as well, no matter the market. And I've only been in a few, right? But I'd be pretty confident in saying that if you talk to a longtime owner of that vacant house, they're going to be severely off on what they think the house needs. And they're also going to say that if they were to do it themselves, it would cost X, right?
Yep.
And because maybe they're a contractor, an old contractor, or they have someone in their family. Yep. But that's never the case for Mr. Investor, right? That's right. So that's what I had to get a little bit better at.
Well, I think that you're pointing out a couple of things, right? Your entire approach was virtual, because doing it in the backyard here in Denver, Denver wasn't a great market. And ultimately your goal was to buy cash flowing assets, right? And so starting in a virtual market and starting to learn that market and doing it in a market that ultimately will lead to you acquiring cash flowing assets made the most sense, right? Denver wasn't that. Denver was a high price market. Things didn't cash flow. Like, not a bad little fix and flip market. But if the goal was to build cash flow long term, then starting the cash generation strategy, wholesaling, in a cash flow market made the most sense.
Yep.
And so that's what you did. Everything you have done has been virtual. So you've never set foot in any of the houses that you flipped. You've seen pictures.
No, that was mind blowing to me. I had to get past. That was another mental hurdle that you got to get through.
Right.
At least for me personally.
Yeah, you've seen pictures, you've seen videos, but you've never stepped foot in any of the houses that you've wholesaled.
No.
And you've never met any of the sellers.
Nope.
You've never met any of the buyers.
Nope.
Right? And so
I'd like to meet some of the buyers now. Now that I'm in my main market personally, I would love to take a yearly yearly trip out there more to get a better feel for the market that I'm now personally buying in. Right. But no, I've never seen, met, shook hands with any of these people. No.
So 2 months ago, you flipped a house. You made what, $15,000?
Yep.
Little wholesale fee.
15.5.
Assignment fee. You signed the contract.
Yep.
Made $15,500.
It was a duplex from last week.
Yep, that duplex that we showed in last week's show. That money you rolled forward, and I want to back up. For the last year and a half, you've been wholesaling.
Yeah.
And you've just been building up your cash reserves.
Strictly. Yep.
Strictly building up your cash reserves. And learning the market, getting comfortable with the analysis, getting comfortable with running the numbers, watching what other investors are doing with not only houses that you've wholesaled, but other houses that you've seen come and go in Facebook groups and email lists and everything else. So you've gotten a knowledge base on the market while you've been generating cash. You flipped that house and you said, you know what? I think it's my turn.
Yep.
And so what did that mean?
Well, I didn't think it's my turn after I closed on the duplex. After the duplex closed with the buyer, I was just on to the next marketing run, or keep calling and answering the phones from the people that are calling from the past marketing run.
Yep.
Right. And as these assignment fees close, I was building up an LLC account basically of capital. And at one point I knew it was going to be used for a house or multiple houses. But I wasn't in that mindset really until you told me to be in that mindset when I brought you that deal. And then you're entering into another level of real estate investing, kind of by fire, just giving it a shot. And it just so happened that the duplex closed. The assignment fee on that one was to a great rehabbing crew down in the city of St. Louis, and they do immaculate flips. And I was happy to give it to them at the price that I did, because they're trying to help out the community and stuff like that. Really cool people. So flipped it over to them, closed in like 20 days. It was great. Cash came in. And then I had a phone call with a lead that came in from a tired landlord list. So, we're a year and a half down the road. We're not just marketing to vacant houses anymore, marketing to different types of distress, because I found, in some areas, more people are likely to call because of that distress and this piece of marketing. So came in from a tired landlord list, and older gentleman wanting to start liquidating his portfolio.
Yep.
So
Joe, let's throw this picture up on the screen if we can. For those of you that are watching on YouTube and not just listening to podcast, we've got a good looking little blue house with a little white block foundation. Henry, when you look at that house, what do you see?
Well, I own it, which is crazy to think, but if you told me in that class, you showed me a picture of this house 2 years ago, I would have been like, why the heck would I buy that house? How is that going to benefit me? Right? Why is that a good opportunity?
How does it benefit you?
Yeah. So, with the cash that I made from the last wholesale fee, the down payment was fully covered plus more on this house. And I wanted to flip this to you at first. And you said you would buy it at the purchase price that I had. And
I'm greedy.
And then you said you need to get this one for yourself, because I told you the numbers, I showed you the pictures.
Yeah.
And I did the normal flow, make the offer, get it under contract, make the offer in the same way that you would make it if you were buying it for yourself, right? So the price always needs to be right. Go get pictures as soon as possible. Get your guys out there. I did all that within 3 days. And then I looked at the pictures. I was like, dang, this is in really good shape. Not to mention, it came with a rent roll, clean as all, no missed payments. Tenants had just moved in December on a 3-year active lease that lasts until whatever that math is. And yeah, I mean, and the cash flow was insane. Obviously, the cash flow for the current owner was everything because he owned it free and clear.
Okay, so I want to talk about this. What gross rent on this house?
$1150.
So Tim V, taxes, insurance, maintenance, management, vacancy. Take out your Tim V. What's your net cash flow?
So $596 and some change.
So almost $600. And so Tim V and the $596 is before or after debt service?
After
debt service.
After debt service.
$600 a month.
Yep.
Net positive cash flow after all operating expenses. Yep. And after debt service.
Yep. And that's because of the purchase price.
I want to talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Because you built your own list, developed your own skill, and got paid along the way to do that, began to understand the different neighborhoods in the market, and was able to go direct to seller, you were able to buy this house at a significant discount than if you didn't have those skills.
Yeah.
That's, a lot of times people talk about wholesalers as being little I investors, and someday you're going to graduate and become a capital I investor, a fix and flipper, or a buy and hold landlord. I will tell you that for the 20 plus years that I've been doing this business, I am always happy to have a wholesaling component to my business because that is my deal flow. Now I get to cherry pick the best deals for myself, and that's exactly what you did here. I would have bought this house. I would have bought this house all day long.
Yeah, so it's three bedroom, 1 bath, right around 1,000 square feet, rented by a nice family, right? No problems. And again, I'm going into it. You said, oh, you should buy this. And I was like, okay, how do I buy this? And you're like, with the money you've been making. So I was like, then you're diving into the next realm of, funding a deal. And are you going to buy it free and clear, or are you going to go hard money? Do you have a private lender yet? You're taking what you've already just organically been learning through wholesaling, because you're selling to these guys that are doing what you're about to do. So you have a little bit of broad knowledge about this, but I started diving into, what are my options to take it down, right? And there were plenty of options. Buy it free and clear, get traditional funding on it, go hard money. A lot of routes didn't pan out because it needed no work. It was ready to go, right? So I got told no by a couple of the more portfolio style hard money institutions. But again, being in those conversations was just knowledge in general, right? Learning about how you need to give them the right numbers and make sure that they'll fund on a deal. But I just went the traditional route here. The assignment fee paid for the down payment, and
totally.
Now it's cash flowing. Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, all of this comes back to one thing. You got to be in the game, and you have to make offers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have to make offers. If you make offers, you're going to create opportunity for yourself. If you sit on the sidelines and wonder, why aren't I making money? And you look back in the last week, in the last month, in the last year, and you say, I haven't made any offers. Well, I can tell you exactly why you haven't made any money. So that's why we're actually running the 100 offer challenge, because we want to challenge people to get in the game. And we've developed a system that is easy to make offers. Mm-hmm. It's easy to get in the game, and it's easy to either generate cash or create cash flow. And I think that's one of the things that you learned through the whole process of not only believing that real estate investing works, but that there were steps to the process that you could follow to keep your risk low, to keep your exposure low, to keep your time low, to keep the money invested low. But then as you develop those skills, you began to generate and create more and more confidence in yourself, in the market, in real estate as a wealth building tool. And it ultimately landed you right here.
Yeah.
And so what I would say to people, if they want to go on that journey with us, anyone that's listening to this can go to freedomsoft.com/join the challenge. That's freedomsoft.com/join the challenge. We're going to be running, coming up next, the 100 offer challenge. And we're going to teach you our offer system. We're going to show you how to systemize your ability to make offers that get accepted and do it simply and at scale. And it's absolutely free. Costs you nothing. We're going to teach you for 5 days exactly how our system works, and you pay nothing. So I'm looking forward to that. It's coming up in the next week is our first session. So
yeah,
get over there.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun.
To build that habit, and I can't wait to see how many deals come out of all these people joining.
Right.
Right, because it's only going to give the testimony that it works, right?
Right.
And it's going to get people in that position that, you organically can get to, but it is all about making offers.
Well, and it's what we do here in the office, right?
Yeah.
We walk up and down these halls, and those of us that invest in real estate here, we talk about it. How many offers did you make this week? How many leads did you get this week? How many, And so it was kind of interesting. Was it a week and a half ago or so? I was sitting at home, and this is going to be our last story, and then we're going to wrap up this episode. I don't even know how long we've been talking.
I was about to say, I told Joe to go make an offer on a house last week that he missed out on the month prior because his price was too high. And we've learned a little bit about that neighborhood since then. And I said, call that guy and make the offer at X. And he got it under contract, and it's assigned before the end of the week already.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
follow
it, right?
up.
Follow up
and market
make
research.
The offer.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why the playbook that we talk about, who are you marketing to today? Who are you following up with today? Mm-hmm. Who are you making an offer to today? Right. All of that stuff matters. And then who are you talking to? Right. And so in our 100 offer challenge, we're going to be walking people through that process. But there was a story I was going to tell. Where were we talking?
You built some lists in some random
places.
That's
right. Yeah. That's right. I built some lists in some random places. You remember this because I walked into the office a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, it's funny because I've been doing this for so long and have built teams doing it and have gotten away from like being the frontline guy that takes the phone calls and talks to the sellers. Like I've done that thousands of times. I've bought and sold thousands of houses. But I haven't been frontline in the trenches. And I thought to myself, it might be kind of fun to do that because I have the time to do it, just out of curiosity. So I sat down at my kitchen table. My wife was gone, or she was somewhere else in the house doing something. I literally took 30 minutes, okay? And I picked 3 smaller markets east of Colorado, and all 3 virtual markets. I built 3 small lists. I set up the account with a list and then a campaign in FreedomSoft. I got local phone numbers for each of those markets, and I sent out direct mail. I sent out about 400 pieces of direct mail. I spent less than a couple $100.
Same postcard for everyone?
Same postcard and same sequence to every single one. My first round of mail has hit as of yesterday. I've got 6 leads. I've got 2 people saying, I want to sell my house quickly. 2. I've spent a couple $100. And I'm still waiting for the other 2 markets for the mail to even hit and those leads to start to come in. And so I tell that story because I'm going to get on the phone and I'm not going to complicate this. At the end of the day, I'm going to make an offer and they're going to say yes or no. And if they say yes, there will be a payday. If they say no, I'll follow up until they either say yes or they tell me to stop contacting them.
Go pound sand.
And so, these are the fun things that we do around here. Like I'm literally doing this not because it has to be a big income generator or because I'm trying to invest in real estate. I'm literally doing it to show people how simple it can be. Mm-hmm. And if you just follow the simple steps in the process and use the tools the way they're designed to be used, anybody can do this.
Yeah, that's something we might want to get. I want to get into in the next show. Why you teach people to do this, like, because you've ran successful funds, you've invested on your own, you've had teams, you've done all this, like, and I think I know the answer to this. It's sort of in your superpowers to teach, and that's sort of the been in the vein since you started was education. But yeah, I would love to next week. Let's talk about why you teach and why you run these challenges and encourage people like Henry to do it. Somebody that's like you were teaching the people in the office. It's not even like just teaching people outside of it. You want the people here close to you to win. So.
I'm teaching people to quit their job if they want to quit their job.
Right.
I'm not quitting my job.
Well, that's good.
That is good. But I teach because I get to sit across from Henry and hear his journey, hear the amount of money he's made in the last year and a half, and look at this little blue house and say to myself, wow, that's pretty darn cool, because that's going to change his family and change his family's financial trajectory for generations to come. Because I don't know if upstream there was real estate investing in the bloodline, but there will be real estate investing in the downstream bloodline. And that's pretty doggone cool.
Yeah. Hit the listeners with the last bit there, and then we can wrap it.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. I want to tell you guys that this episode is brought to you by Freedom Soft, and we want to just say thanks for listening. This is super fun. If you want to engage with us, just keep coming back. Subscribe to the show, and we're going to keep doing this and have a lot of fun doing it. That's a wrap.